Someone who cannot stay beside you may, at times, be the very person who helps you understand yourself most clearly. They enter your life not necessarily to become the one who remains until the end, but to touch a part within you that has long been forgotten. You may call it a connection born at the wrong time, a relationship with no real outcome, or a longing that is difficult to explain. But from Carl Jung's perspective, that pull is often not only about the other person, it is about what they awaken in your unconscious. You may think you are simply in love with a particular person, but perhaps you are confronting a deeper image within yourself. That person may take the shape of something you have long desired, a part of you that once felt missing, or an old wound you have never truly dared to face. And so, when you cannot have them, the pain does not come only from loss. It comes from being forced to see a truth you had spent so long avoiding. In this video, we will not speak about love in the comforting, easy way people often do. We will look at why someone who does not belong to you can become a doorway back to yourself. And when you begin to understand the psychological mechanism behind that attachment, you may come to realize that what hurts the most is not always losing that person, but the fact that they awakened a part of you that you can no longer continue to deny. Part 1. They awaken what you once buried within. Before that person came into your life, you may have been doing quite well, at least from the outside. You knew what you were supposed to do, how you were supposed to behave, which role you had to play so that life would not become unsettled. You no longer found it easy to say what you needed. You no longer allowed yourself to expect too much. Over the years, you learned how to become someone who fit neatly into your circumstances, into your responsibilities, into what others could accept. But the price of that fitting in was that some of the truest parts of you were forced to stand outside your own life. The part you left behind does not always take the shape of something dark or wrong. It may be your capacity to love deeply, a capacity you once had to suppress because you were afraid of being seen as too dependent. It may be the softness you learned to hide because life demanded that you become harder. It may also be the longing to live more freely, to speak more honestly, to choose what you truly want more often. Though you kept reminding yourself that mature people should not make everything more complicated, you locked those parts away, not because you were weak, but because at some point, locking them away was the only way you knew how to keep living in peace. Then that person appears, and they do not need to do anything dramatic to unsettle you. Sometimes it is simply the way they listen without rushing to fix you. Sometimes it is the way they live honestly with their own emotions without feeling ashamed. Sometimes it is an ordinary conversation. Yet afterward, you return home and realize something inside you is no longer as still as it was before. You understand that you cannot be with them. Perhaps they already belong to another life, another bond, another distance you cannot cross. But precisely because you cannot have them, you begin to recognize something even more frightening. They have opened a door you do not know how to close. Daniel Reeves, a 38-year-old software engineer in Seattle, once experienced this in a very quiet way. In the eyes of his colleagues, Daniel was reliable, composed, and good at keeping problems under control. He had a tidy apartment, a steady work schedule, and a life that seemed almost without deviation. But long ago, Daniel had wanted to write music. He had wanted to love without caution. He had wanted to tell the truth, instead of always choosing the safest answer. He did not lose those things in a single day. He simply put them away little by little, the way someone stores a guitar in the corner of a closet and slowly grows used to a room without sound. During a
Chào bạn,
community
khu vườn này đẹp
project,
quá.
Daniel
Vâng, cảm
met
ơn bạn.
Mara,
Mình rất thích
a
nó.
Hy
freelance
vọng được gặp lại bạn.
photographer. Mara was not
Trời,
someone who could belong to
mưa
him.
to thật.
She had her own life, her own
nhưng ở
choices,
đây ấm
and a
áp.
boundary so clear
Anh
that
thích
Daniel
khoảnh
knew
khắc
he
này.
could not
Em
step
cũng
beyond
vậy.
it. But she lived in a way that
Em,
made it impossible
anh
for
thích
him to
đi
keep
dạo với
avoiding
em.
himself. She
Em
spoke
cũng thích
plainly,
lắm.
laughed genuinely,
Tháp
and looked at
Spenido
people as if they
kìa.
did not have
Đẹp
to prove
quá
so
anh.
much. Being near Mara,
Tuyệt
Daniel did not
vời.
merely feel
Giữ
drawn to
nguyên
a
góc
person.
này nhé.
He felt the artist
Được
in
rồi,
him,
em
the
chụp
courage
đi.
in him, the part of him
Xong
capable of
rồi.
deep love.
Cảnh đẹp
Begin
quá.
to breathe again
Em
after
chụp
years
giỏi
of being
thật.
forgotten. Jung called this region pushed out of consciousness the shadow. But the shadow is not only made of what is ugly. Very often, the shadow holds some of the most beautiful parts of us, parts that life once taught us to fear. Carl Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. When what has been buried remains unseen, it can make you believe that this person is your destiny, when in truth, they may be reflecting an essential part of yourself that you have become separated from. So that person does not hurt you only because they cannot stay. They hurt you because after meeting them, you can no longer live as though that hidden room never existed. They are like a light suddenly switched on in a basement you have avoided entering for years. At first, that light is not comforting because it shows you the dust, the old belongings, and all the things you once left behind. But it also reveals that there is still far more life within you than you thought. Seen in this way, the question is not only why God would send you someone you cannot be with. The deeper question is, which part of you needed that person to appear in order to be opened? And if this brings to mind someone specific, someone who does not belong to you but made you see yourself differently, press like to mark this beginning. In the next part, we will go deeper into why they feel so special, almost as if you have recognized them for a very long time, even though your rational mind knows they are not someone you can keep. Part 2. They reveal the self you have not yet become. When someone touches you deeply, you often assume the matter lies entirely in them. You believe they possess something rare, something exceptional, something almost impossible to encounter again. You remember the way they spoke, the way they saw the world, the way they made you feel understood without needing to explain yourself too much. But if you look more closely, what draws you toward them is not only who they are in real life. What keeps you attached is the feeling that when you are near them, you glimpse a version of yourself you do not usually dare to live. Someone who cannot be with you often holds a strange kind of power in this way. They do not only make you want to be loved, they make you realize how far you may have drifted from yourself. Before them, you may have grown used to playing the role of someone composed, responsible, and capable of setting aside your own feelings so that things do not become complicated. But when they appear, that outer layer begins to crack. You realize that you can still be moved, that you still want to be chosen, that you still long for a life with more depth than the tasks you complete each day. Imagine someone who has lived too long in a room filled with white light. Everything in that room is clean, orderly, and easy to control, but there is no color. Then they meet someone who cannot belong to them, someone already bound to another life, someone who only passes through for a brief season, or someone too far away to truly enter their world. Their presence is like a window being opened, allowing the late afternoon light to fall into the room. The room does not change immediately, but suddenly you realize you have been living under a cold light for far too long. In Jungian psychology, this can be understood through projection. Projection does not mean that you invented this person. They are real. Their magnetism is real. The qualities that move you are real, but the intensity of what you feel often comes from the way they touch a part of you that lives in the unconscious. You see in them the freedom you once held back, the honesty you were once afraid to use, the softness you learned to hide, or the courage to live truthfully that you traded away in order to remain safe and undisturbed. Carl Jung once wrote, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. But it is not only irritation that can lead us back to ourselves. Sometimes attraction does the same. The person you cannot be with can become such a powerful mirror that you do not only see them, you also see everything you have not been brave enough to reclaim. You think you are looking at an ideal person, but on a deeper level, you are looking at an unlived part of your own life." This is why the feeling often resembles fate. Not always fate in the sense that two people are meant to belong to one another, but fate in a psychological sense. This person appears precisely where you are missing an encounter with yourself. Jung referred to one deep layer of this recognition as the anima and animus, unconscious images of wholeness, love, and the inner opposite within each person. When someone of the outer world comes close to touching that inner image, you may feel as though you have known them for a very long time, even if in reality, you have not had enough time to truly understand who they are. One person may be drawn to someone because the other lives with great freedom, while they themselves have spent years doing only what is right. Another may become haunted by someone's calmness, because inside them there is a restlessness no one can see. Someone else may fall in love with a person who cannot choose them, not only because that person is beautiful or kind, but because beside them they feel for the first time that they no longer have to perform strength. All of these experiences share one thing in common. The other person is not merely the object of affection, but the screen onto which the unconscious projects what lies hidden deep within. Put simply, you may not only want that person, you may be longing for the feeling of being yourself when you are near them. You may be longing for the life they seem to represent. You may be longing for the courageous part of you, the tender part, the vivid part, or the honest part that you left behind during the years when you had to hold yourself together. And so, when you realize you cannot be with them, the pain becomes heavier than an ordinary heartbreak. You do not merely lose the possibility of love. It feels as if you have touched another life, only to watch the door close in front of you. But this is exactly where Jung offers a less hopeless way of seeing. That person is not necessarily the missing piece of you. They may be the mirror that helps you see the pieces of yourself waiting to be reclaimed. If you only cling to them, you remain trapped in longing. But if you begin to ask, what quality in this person hurts me so deeply? And what is that quality trying to reveal about me? Then the impossible relationship begins to turn into a deeply personal lesson. It does not erase the sadness immediately, but it draws the sadness out of the darkness of meaninglessness. And when you realize that this person has shown you your own true self, the next question becomes more difficult. If they reflected something beautiful or alive within you, why does the encounter hurt so much? Why can something that helps you see yourself more clearly also make your heart crack like a floor that has carried too much weight for too many years? Part 3. Their absence brings your old wounds to the surface. The pain of someone you cannot be with has a very different structure. It is not like a clear breakup, where two people once belonged to each other and then lost one another. Nor is it like an ordinary longing, where time can slowly make everything fade. This pain is more unsettling because you are grieving something that was never truly yours. You miss a life that never happened. You mourn a future that only appeared in your mind, yet felt real enough to make the present feel too small. You may know very clearly that you should not go any further. That person may have a family, another commitment, another life, or perhaps the two of you simply cannot meet at the right time. Your rational mind understands that boundary, but something inside you refuses to understand it in such a cold and simple way. That part of you does not only want the person, it wants the feeling of coming back to life when you are near them. This is what makes the pain go deeper than an unfinished love story. Some wounds do not hurt every day, but they remain there like cracks beneath a fresh coat of paint. You can still live, still work, still laugh and speak as usual, but when pressure lands on the right place, the old fracture begins to show. That person is often that exact pressure point. They do not create all the hurt within you. They simply touch a place that has been fragile for a long time. So you may think you are overreacting to one person, when in truth, you are responding to years of having ignored your own needs. Look at Emily Hart, a 34-year-old elementary school teacher living in Portland. Emily was the kind of person everyone found easy to like. She was gentle, thoughtful, patient, and almost never asked for anything for herself. In the classroom, in her family, and in her relationships, Emily was used to being the one who kept everything calm. She did not think this was a problem, because all her life she had been praised for being considerate of others. But praise can sometimes be like a coat worn for too many years. It keeps you warm, yet it also makes you forget what your own body needs. Then, in a parent volunteer group, Emily met Julian, an architect who often helped with school activities. Julian did not cross any boundaries. He had a family, his own life, and Emily understood very clearly that he was not someone she could move toward. But the way Julian spoke to her touched something very deep. He listened to her thoughts as though they carried weight. He asked what she wanted, not only whether she was okay. To someone else, these may have been nothing more than a few kind conversations. To Emily, it felt as though, for the first time in a very long while, someone had knocked on the door of the exact room she had forgotten inside herself. What hurt Emily was not only that she could not be with Julian. What hurt her was that, through him, she realized how long she had lived as someone who only knew how to care for others. She once had desires of her own. She once wanted to be chosen clearly. She once wanted to be present, not because she was useful, but simply because she was herself. Julian became a dangerous mirror in the psychological sense, because that mirror did not only show her current face, it also showed her the face that had been covered over for many years. From a Jungian perspective, Julian could be understood as a projection of the positive animus within Emily. Put simply, he reflected inner qualities she had not yet dared to reclaim: decisiveness, depth, the right to have a voice, the right to want more than a pleasant and acceptable role. Carl Jung once wrote, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." This is not about becoming a perfect person. It is about no longer living as a version of yourself that has been carefully edited in order to be accepted. This is where the pain begins to carry meaning. It is no longer only a sign that you loved the wrong person. It may be a sign that some part of you has been waiting far too long to be seen. That person is like a heavy rain revealing a roof that has been leaking for years. The rain is inconvenient, but it is not the only cause of the problem. It simply shows you where something has long needed repair. So when God sends you someone you cannot be with, perhaps the pain is not meant to pull you into a pursuit with no way out. It forces you to stop in front of your own old wound. It asks you a question that is not easy to answer. Are you hurting because you lost that person? Or are you hurting because you finally saw how long you have been abandoning yourself? And when that question appears, you find yourself standing at a very real crossroads. You can chase after that person, run from this feeling, or stay long enough to understand what within you is asking to come home. Part 4. Holding on only pulls you further from yourself. When someone who cannot belong to you touches you deeply, your first instinct is usually not to understand. Your first instinct is to do something that makes you feel less powerless. You want to send one more message, find one more reason to see them again, reread every small detail, and wonder whether you missed a hidden sign. The mind begins to work, like someone turning an entire room upside down after losing a key, even though deep down you know the door was never meant to open for you. What makes this kind of clinging dangerous is not the fact that you still care. Loving someone is not wrong. What causes you to lose yourself is when you begin to use their presence as a measure of your own worth. When a message arrives, your heart feels lighter. When they grow more distant for a day, you feel as though all your strength has been drained. At that point, they are no longer merely a person you love. They become the switch that controls your entire inner state. And no one can live in peace when their soul has been placed in the hands of someone who cannot stay. The more you try to keep them, the more you have to cut parts of yourself away. You cut back your needs, so you will not pressure them. You cut back your questions, so you will not break the fragile closeness you still have. You cut back your self-respect, so you can accept an unclear position, simply because having even a small part of them feels better than losing them completely. But each time you cut yourself down like that, something inside you weakens. It is like a tree leaning endlessly toward a window of sunlight until its roots begin to pull away from the soil. In Jungian psychology, this is the moment when projection begins to swallow the one who is projecting. At first, that person helps you see a forgotten part of yourself. But if you do not reclaim that part, if you continue to believe that all the light belongs to them, you become someone begging another person to return your own life to you. Carl Jung once wrote, "Where love rules, there is no will to power, and where power predominates, their love is lacking." When love becomes a need to control the outcome, control the response, control the distance, it is no longer love in its deepest sense. It becomes the fear of losing your right to live fully. There is a kind of clinging that looks very quiet, yet drains you from within. You do not create a scene. You do not make clear demands. You simply wait. You wait for them to have time. Wait for them to remember. Wait for them to choose you. Wait for circumstances to change. On the surface, you may seem patient, but in truth, your life is being hung on an uncertain hook. You still go to work, still meet other people, still say that you are fine, but a large part of your mind remains reserved for a possibility that has never truly belonged to you. Running away does not resolve this either. You can delete the messages, avoid places that remind you of them, throw yourself into work, or force yourself into another relationship too quickly. These things may calm the surface for a while, but if the lesson underneath has not been heard, the unconscious will find another way to repeat the same question. You may meet another person with a different face, but the old feeling returns. Once again, there is waiting. Once again, there is a boundary you cannot cross. Once again, there is the feeling that you only become fully alive when someone else awakens you. The hardest choice is not to chase them or cut them off. The hardest choice is to stop without deceiving yourself. You admit that you want them, but you also admit that wanting them must not turn you into someone who betrays yourself. You allow the pain to be present, but you do not allow it to steer your entire life. You look directly at that longing and ask, is it pointing only toward the other person, or is it pointing toward a part of me that has been starving to be loved, starving to live honestly, starving to be acknowledged for far too long? Put simply, that person may be the lamp that reveals the room within you, but they are not the room itself. They may remind you of life, but they are not your only source of life. When you understand this, you begin to take back pieces of yourself from the hands of obsession. You do not need to hate them in order to let go. You do not need to deny what happened. You only need to stop turning them into the only place where your soul is allowed to breathe. And if you want to keep moving deeper into layers like this, subscribe to the channel. We will not rush to turn pain into a beautiful slogan. We will look at it more slowly, more honestly, and deeply enough to see what within you is waiting to be reclaimed. Part 5. This love teaches you to love without owning. When you have stopped chasing that person as though they were the missing piece of your life, a strange emptiness begins to appear. That emptiness is not comfortable, because before this, your mind still had something to hold on to, thinking about them, waiting for them, interpreting them, imagining another possibility. But when you no longer allow yourself to build your life around someone you cannot be with, you must face a harder question. If this love cannot become a relationship, then what did it come for? The answer is not found in making the pain sound more beautiful. Not every love that fails automatically becomes a profound lesson. Some pain only turns people bitter if they keep seeing it as a debt life owes them. But if you are honest enough not to distort the truth, that love can teach you something rare. Some people enter your life not so you can possess them, but so you can understand how deeply your capacity to love has become entangled with the fear of loss. Jung was deeply interested in the imagery of alchemy, where raw material must pass through fire in order to be transformed into something of greater value. In psychological life, that fire is often not peace. It is the feeling of being heated by longing, disappointment, jealousy, regret, memory, and the helplessness of knowing you cannot make the other person yours. That fire can burn you into resentment, but it can also burn away the illusion that love only has value when it remains under your control. To love without possessing does not mean you must remain in an unclear relationship, nor does it mean you must become so noble that you deny your need to be loved in return. The need to be loved clearly is deeply real, but there is a deeper layer where you begin to realize that love should not turn the other person into evidence of your worth. When you need them to choose you before you can feel lovable, love has already been taken over by fear. And fear always wants to hold on tightly. You can see this through Michael Warren, a 42-year-old chef living in Chicago. Michael was not someone who often spoke about his feelings. He had a small restaurant, a demanding schedule, and a habit familiar to many people who once lacked warmth, keeping himself busy so he would not have to hear what was missing inside. He was good at caring for others through food, but clumsy when it came to allowing others to care for him. For Michael, being needed always felt safer than being loved, because being needed seemed easier to control. Then Naomi began coming to the restaurant on Thursday afternoons. She was an art therapist with a slow, attentive way of listening, as though the person in front of her did not have to hurry to become okay. Through a few conversations, Michael spoke for the first time about his distant father, about the years he had used work to cover the emptiness inside him, and about his fear that if he were no longer useful, no one would stay. Naomi made him no promises. She could not enter his life as a lover either, because she was preparing to leave Chicago to care for her seriously ill mother in another city. That boundary was clear, and precisely because it was clear, it hurt. But what matters is that after Naomi left, Michael was no longer the same. He did not turn his longing into a pursuit. He also did not pretend she had meant nothing. He began cooking differently. He wrote menus from childhood memories, called his younger brother after years of distance, and practiced answering honestly when people asked how he was. Naomi did not become his, but their encounter revealed a part of him that had long been starving. The part that wanted to be touched without first having to be useful. Carl Jung once wrote, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." A true encounter can change you, even when it does not remain in the form you had hoped for. The point is not to use that quote to justify an impossible love. The point is to recognize that some encounters do not give you ownership, but they do give you a new level of awareness about how you love, how you fear, and how you lose yourself when you need too desperately to be kept. Put simply, that person may not belong to you, but what they awakened does not have to leave with them. The softening, the courage, the ability to love more deeply, the ability to see your real needs. These things can become yours if you stop imprisoning them inside the image of the other person. Then love is no longer a hand trying to grasp a stream of water. It becomes the realization that the stream has shown you how thirsty you are, and that it is time to find your way back to the source of life within you. After this fire, people usually do not emerge immediately with peace. More often, there is an empty, unfamiliar stage that is difficult to name. You no longer want to live as you did before, but you also do not yet know who you are becoming. This is the darkness after an old shell has burned away, and it is this very darkness that opens the next part of the journey. Part 6. This darkness becomes the doorway to your rebirth. This stage often leaves you confused because you assume that once you understand, you should immediately feel lighter. But some truths do not make us lighter right away. First, they wake us up. And once you are awake, you begin to see clearly the things you had been enduring as a habit. A shallow conversation becomes harder to swallow. A relationship built only on roles begins to feel tighter. The ways you once used to distract yourself no longer work as they used to. You are not necessarily sadder. You are simply no longer as numb as before. This is why the darkness after an impossible love can feel so deep. That person has moved away from the center, but the emptiness they leave behind still has nowhere to go. You cannot return to who you were, because that version of you was built on too many compromises with yourself. But the new self is not yet clear enough for you to lean on. It feels like standing inside a house under renovation. The old walls have been knocked down. Dust is still covering the floor. More light is coming in, but you do not yet know how the new room will be built. From Jung's perspective, this is a very real part of individuation. The journey of becoming a fuller and more truthful human being, not merely the version trained to please life. This process is rarely gentle. It often begins with a fracture, then continues through a period of disorientation. Carl Jung once wrote, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain. Consciousness does not arise because we tell ourselves everything is fine. It arises when we become brave enough to see what is no longer fine. In this darkness, you may become more sensitive to very small things. A song may bring back the feeling of once being seen. A road may make your heart tighten. A careless sentence from someone may touch the exact place you are trying to keep still. But this sensitivity is not necessarily a sign that you are becoming weaker. Often, it means the old armor has cracked. Before, you did not hurt as much because you had learned not to feel as much. Now you hurt more clearly because a part of you has begun to come back to life. Even so, it must be said honestly, you should not build a home inside this darkness. Pain may carry meaning, but it should not become your identity. The fact that someone you could not be with once awakened you does not mean you must live forever as someone left behind. Some people pass through our lives like a storm that tears open a decaying roof. After the storm, what matters is not worshipping the storm, nor cursing it forever. What matters is looking closely at your own house and beginning the repair from the foundation. Put more simply, this darkness has not come to swallow you. It has come to separate you from what has become too old. It forces you to recognize that the absence of the other person is not the only emptiness. There is an older emptiness that existed long before they arrived, the distance between the person you have been living as and the person you truly need to become. That person only made the distance more visible. The way water receding from a shallow lake reveals what has been lying at the bottom for years. So do not rush to see this darkness as a failure. It may be the stage in which your soul is shedding an old skin. That old skin once helped you survive, but it is no longer wide enough for the life that is trying to emerge. You may feel empty, lost, and no longer suited to many things that once felt familiar. But this very sense of no longer fitting is what creates space for a more truthful way of living to appear. When God sends you someone you cannot be with, perhaps He is not only sending you a loss, perhaps He allows a dark passage to open so you can no longer lean on old roles, old ways of loving, old ways of deceiving yourself. And when you move through that darkness without turning it into your home, you begin to realize the most important thing. That person was not the final light. They were only the flash of lightning that helped you see the path already waiting within you. From here, the journey is no longer about continuing to suffer as deeply as possible. The journey is learning how to bring what has been awakened back into your real life, not by carrying the illusion of that person with you, but by carrying the aliveness, the honesty, and the part of your soul that the encounter returned to you. Part 7. You turn their memory into a light that leads you home. At some point, you will understand that the memory of that person does not have to become a room where you imprison yourself. It can become a lamp. That lamp does not shine toward them so you can keep searching for a way back. It shines into your own life, into the places where you once lived too small, too carefully, too far from yourself. Seen this way, that person is no longer only a wound. They become a marker of the moment you began to wake up. Integration, in the Jungian sense, is not forgetting, nor is it forcing yourself to act as though none of it ever mattered. Integration means reclaiming the parts of you that were once revealed through that person and bringing them back into your own life. If they reminded you of freedom, you begin to ask yourself what cage you have been living in. If they reminded you of courage, you begin to speak more honestly in the places where you once avoided the truth. If they reminded you of your capacity to love deeply, you learn to love without turning yourself into someone begging for a place to stand. This is the great difference between carrying an illusion and carrying a light. To carry an illusion is to keep rewriting the story in your mind, to keep believing that if only the circumstances had been different, your life would have been saved. To carry a light is to acknowledge that this person awakened something real, but that what is real does not have to remain locked forever inside their image. It must be lived outwardly, in the way you choose your work, your relationships, your words, and the way you treat yourself each day. Jung might call this part of the journey toward the self, the deeper part of you that longs for wholeness. The ego often wants the story to follow its own script. It wants to be chosen, to have a clear outcome, to have that person stay so the pain can be proven worthy. But the deeper part of you does not only want a romantic ending. It wants you to stop betraying yourself. It wants you to gather the forgotten pieces and live as a more truthful human being. Carl Jung once wrote, "Your vision will become clear only when you can look into your own heart." This is especially fitting for a love that cannot be lived. While you are trapped in that person, you keep looking outward, asking what they think, whether they remember, whether they regret anything, whether they ever wanted to choose you. But when you begin to look into your own heart, you find the deeper question: what has this encounter shown me about my life, about the way I love, about the part of my soul I have left starving for too long? When God sends you someone you cannot be with, perhaps it is not meant to take happiness away from you. Perhaps it places you before a truth you would never have looked at if life had continued too quietly. That person is like a ray of light entering through a crack in the wall. At first, you only see the crack. Later, you realize that because of that very crack, light was able to enter a room that had been dark for far too long. And if what was awakened in you is real, then it is not wasted. An unfinished love is not necessarily a meaningless love. It only becomes meaningless when you use it as a reason to close your heart, to grow bitter, or to live as though the most beautiful part of you left with the other person. But if, after that encounter, you live more truthfully, choose more clearly, love with greater awareness, and no longer abandon yourself as easily as before, then that memory has become part of your becoming. At this point, the question is no longer why that person cannot be with you. The question is what you will do with the lamp they left in your life. Will you keep holding it toward a door that has already closed? Or will you use it to see the path opening within you? And if there has ever been someone like that in your life, someone who did not belong to you but helped you see yourself more clearly, leave a comment below. You do not need to say too much. Simply write what you learned from that encounter, because sometimes naming the lesson is the first step in allowing the memory to stop being a chain and begin becoming light. After all of this, perhaps the hardest thing is not accepting that they did not stay. The harder thing is accepting that the encounter changed you, and that you can no longer return to living as you once did. A part of you has been named. A part that had been asleep has opened its eyes. And even if that person does not continue the journey with you, what they awakened still needs a place in your life. Jung did not see deep inner collisions like this as merely emotional matters. They are moments when the unconscious pushes us closer to the truth. That person may not have been destiny in the way you once hoped, but they may be a powerful sign that it is time for you to live more truthfully with yourself. So do not rush to call that encounter a mistake. Some people do not come to become your home. They come like an open doorway in an old room, so you can see that there is still light outside, and that within you, there is still a life that has not yet been touched. When you understand this, you do not need to forget them in order to be free. You only need to stop forgetting yourself because of them.